This one will go to you, Zach. What are your plans for restoring conservative leadership to the House of Representatives?
Well, I appreciate that question. I think the most important thing that we can do is to do that, start where we live. And as I've said lots of times, we need to have a more conservative outlook from this district. I've known Mr. Jones for a long time. I have a lot of respect for him. I honor his service and his tenure. I think that he and I view some issues differently. I believe that voter ID is something that should have been wholeheartedly supported, and Mr. Jones will have some explanations for you, but the question is, what did we do to pass that? Not what was the problem with what was in front of us, but what did we do to pass that? Think about that question. I think that the best way we can restore conservative leadership is one district at a time. And we've got to start right here. We have an opportunity in this race to have somebody who cares about West Texas and who wants to, quite frankly, do it for a long time. I don't have a problem saying that. People ask me, what do you want to do after this? I want to serve in the Texas legislature. I've been fortunate to see government at lots of levels. I have a heart and a real love for not the way that institution is now, but the way it was 10 or 12 years ago. And I think we can get back to that. I don't think all is lost there. It's not too late to have people who know what they believe, who go down there and do it, and who respect people of different views. We can do all of those things again. The way to restore conservative leadership is to have that kind of straightforward, honest conservatism that cares about people that disagrees, but remembers its values. That's the face of conservatism that can put us back in the majority where we want to be.
Thank you. Charles?
First of all, I want to say conservatism is not a ideology. To me, it's a lifestyle. I'm probably one of the most conservative people you'd find, but people that deal with me understand that I also have the ability to see other viewpoints. And through that process, we get consensus that works well. There's just principles that as a conservative you don't violate. And what I see is the word conservative as a label used in so many different ways. I think strong leadership, obviously, local leadership. People that understand principle where you can, or you're allowed to disagree, but they respect the fact that you're not going to change your view tomorrow. And that seems to be what we have going on. It's kind of blowing in the wind, whatever the wind's blowing today. But I'll give you an example. Property rights are one of those principles that conservative people hang on to. And this is not a reflection of anything, but it's the facts that as an attorney, you're trained to represent either side of that fence. You can debate either side of that fence. You can win either side of that fence. And when you can actually violate the principle of a property right in justification of that's what I do to do well, I would like to have a good attorney, but to me that reflects a lack of principle that's built into the ingrained in the nature of conservative. There's just things that you are not going to give up, even for if it's in your career specs. So I'm just saying that just from a background as a practical matter, I represent people against the establishment every day. I want to make sure they're not paying any more of their share of taxes than they're supposed to. I've always been on that right side of the fence, and that supports my conservative values. That's my training, that's my background. When you're in the legal profession, you're trained to debate either side. And from what I understand, he's very good at that. But the bottom line there is that there's just core principles that if you're truly conservative, you would never violate even in your job performance.
Thank you. Kelly?
I think we need a definition of conservatism, and in my mind, a conservative person is one who protects the business climate of our state, because the small business owner is the primary person who creates employment, creates jobs for people, and they're the people who deal with the average citizen, and they have to compete for that average citizen's dollar. So anything I can do to preserve our business climate, I think, is a conservative issue. Another example, I voted against the 1% gross receipt tax because the big sales pitch was that this bill would close loopholes on the corporations that were getting out from under taxes. It didn't close the loopholes, it adjusted it downward. It changed the rate of tax on the franchise tax rolling all of it into a 1% gross receipt, that tax hit every business person. It's not based on profit, it's on gross receipts. And I think it was harmful. And it was touted as a no tax increase. I'm not very smart, but if this one produces tax at this level, 1% gross receipt produces this level, it's a tax increase. And any tax increase comes out of your pocket. And that, when you tax the pocketbook of the small person, you are not a conservative. And that's misrepresentative legislation. Yes, I voted against voter ID because it was a grossly misrepresented piece of legislation. The big pitch was photo ID will protect this voting booth. There were 20 exceptions in that bill. It did not require a photo. This is ridiculous, but you could have had a library card if it had passed. You would have had a library card. You could have had a sex change operation document. Those two things would qualify you to vote. A utility bill, a library card. There were 20 different things that any two of them qualified you to vote. I think it weakened our protection because presently the election person can decide if there's something doubtful about the person coming to vote. Let him vote, put him on the special list so that it has to be reviewed to determine qualifications before it's accepted. Had we specified certain things, any two of those would have mandated they had to let them
I'm
vote.
going to stop you right there, but actually that takes us into our final question that I have for you all today. So we're just moving right along. It's worked out well. And this one will go to you first, Charles. With all of the fraud surrounding elections, what plans do you have to safeguard the integrity of Texas elections?
Well, I think first of all, the voter ID bill that we just described, there's been bills in the previous two legislative sessions that did just as simple as a photo ID. It was not brought, one was actually on the House floor to vote, and it did not get voted by our current leadership. I don't understand that. That's an easy thing to do. Two, what I want to say is I'm about fixing the problem. Again, I go back to why do we have a voter ID issue? A large problem is because we have weak border security, weak border control. That ties into federal at so many different levels, but I'm about correcting the problem at the border. Obviously, we need voter ID because you can't get on a plane, you can't issue a check, so that's just common sense. I call it the no-brainer provision. There was bills in the past presented that need to be pushed. I do believe either one of us three, when we get down there, will vote and we'll have a voter ID bill the first session. I mean, the first part of that session. Everybody's ready to go forward now. A little deeper issue. Why are we having the illegal immigration control issues? Why are we bringing folks in that aren't part of the society? Number one, we've got something people want to be a part of. I encourage that. But most importantly, be a part of it in a legal way, participate in the system. So it goes back to, let's take a broad view of why we're having the issues are, and then let's be willing to get down into the trees and roll up our sleeves and fix those issues. But I have no problem with people coming into this country the right way that want to vote. But to protect it, something as simple as a photo ID will help. It will not solve, but it will help because you can create fraud there, but it will be a step in the right direction. Photo ID is absolute key. It's just a pretty easy process.